The Toronto Blue Jays season has come to an end, and that's the same for a lot of these teams. So, who did great? Who did bad? Who did better than expected? Who did worse? We're going to talk about it all today.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jays. Thank you for making Locked On Blue Jays your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. As always, I'm Braden Uwasco. He's Carter First. You can find us on Twitter, Braden5Uwasco, Carter First 2, as well on Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Blue Jays. If you're new here on YouTube or listening anywhere else, make sure you head over to YouTube, drop that subscription, so you stay up to date on all your Blue Jays information, and you can get notified when we go live or we have a short or video or whatever. Also, down below in the description is the link to the Discord, the Locked On Blue Jays Discord. You can come over there, talk Blue Jays with us any time of day that you want. In saying that, we got a lot today, like a lot. We have, first, we're going to go over the AL, just the AL East in the first segment. We're going to talk about what happened. What teams shocked us? What teams let us down? Where did we think everybody was going to land? Then we'll talk about the rest of the AL, and we'll finish it off with the NL, the rest of the league in general in the third segment, the entirety of the MLB, and who biggest disappointments, biggest surprises, everything in between. Carter, let's start it off with the AL East, my guy.
Yeah, we always talk about the disappointments of the Toronto Blue Jays. Might be a little more fun to talk about other teams' disappointments. You don't necessarily get even a fraction of that when you talk about a lot of the AL East teams compared to expectation, compared to the Toronto Blue Jays. But when we go into the other teams in the league, especially when we get into the NL, there's some teams there that, and then we'll get in, obviously, the AL Central. There's one team there that had a very disappointing season, but we'll get into all of that. So we might as well get it out of the way. Let's start with the Toronto Blue Jays disappointment. We've been hammering this into you guys. Obviously, if you're a fan of the Toronto Blue Jays for any sort of period of time, you had a lot of hope going into the season, a lot of expectation. Maybe with the roster construction, you didn't, like, it was capped in a certain sense, but you didn't think the Toronto Blue Jays were going to only have 74 wins going into the season. And that's what they ended up getting. So I'm with the Toronto Blue Jays. I'm just going to kind of leave it here with just final thoughts already, because we've been talking this to death. We're going to focus on more so the other teams in this episode. But just overall, like, just last thing about Toronto Blue Jays being bad. I'm kind of over this discussion we've been talking about for a while.
Yeah, I mean, it's not what anybody expected. And I think the writing was on the wall. We maybe should have expected something like this to happen because, you know, like I said, I think there were warning signs, but nobody really paid a whole lot of attention. And then it started to go downhill. And yeah, we were falling off a cliff, and it was almost too late to try to drag ourselves out of it. So the Toronto Blue Jays season was a big disappointment, but I think it's time, like Carter said, let's move on to the other teams. We've talked this one to death, and we will continue to talk it to death. So
yeah, I mean, I had 89 wins, you had 90 wins. Obviously, it didn't happen. The Toronto Blue Jays, going into it, had the 8th highest projected win total. They were the 7th worst for wins in the entire MLB. So that's kind of where we're going to leave it with the Toronto Blue Jays. So let's start with the New York Yankees. This is a team that, going into projections, were one of the highest teams in projected for win total. So they had the New York Yankees at 93.5. I'm just going to go over all of them here. 93.5. The actual win total was 94. Pretty good line from the sportsbook there. Baltimore Orioles at 90.5. The actual 91. Pretty good line right there as well. The Toronto Blue Jays, 87.5 was their projected win total. The Toronto Blue Jays end up getting a whopping 74 wins. What a year for them. The Tampa Bay Rays, 85.5 wins. Actual was 80, so slightly under. And the Boston Red Sox was at 79.5. Their actual win total was 81. So for us, for me at least, I'll kind of let you talk about your own predictions for the MLB. Me going into the season, I thought the Yankees were going to win it. I know you had that as well. We were the only ones in the locked-on division of the AL East that picked the Yankees to win the division. So credit to us. I believe we both had the Orioles right after. And then this is where it starts getting a little bit different. I had the Blue Jays. I'm not sure. I can't remember exactly what you had, but I had the Blue Jays at 89 wins. Didn't end up happening, obviously. Then I had the Tampa Bay Rays in 4th, and I had the Boston Red Sox being in last. So obviously what happened is the Jays got last. I hate talking about that. But then you got the Boston Red Sox in 3rd place, Tampa Bay Rays in 2nd. Or in 4th, sorry.
Yeah, dude, I don't know. It was sort of the same thing for me, right? I had the Blue Jays at 90 wins, finishing 3rd in the division, but it just... Oh, it's just tough. And then I had Tampa being better than the Red Sox. The biggest surprise out of the AL East has to be the Boston Red Sox. I don't think anybody had them even coming close to 81. I think I had them around like 75, I want to say. Probably more so closer to where the Toronto Blue Jays finished the season. But, you know, like it's baseball. I always say this, anything can happen in baseball. But in saying that, I think that there was a lot of parity this season and a lot of unexpected twists and turns. So yeah, I don't know. Good for Red Sox fans, I guess. That was a little bit of a more exciting season than they probably had pegged in for.
No, for me, I'm going to leave it at this. The biggest surprise was Toronto Blue Jays. I didn't have them being this bad. Again, maybe when you look at the roster construction, it could be like not as expectations. When you talk about the Boston Red Sox, yeah, I mean, I had them last in the division. I did not expect them to be ahead of the Toronto Blue Jays and really put the Toronto Blue Jays season to bed after sweeping them right after the Cleveland Guardians swept the Toronto Blue Jays. So that was definitely tough for an AL East opponent to kind of put your season to bed. But just going over expectations, like the New York Yankees, we have them at number one. And Aaron Judge, Juan Soto. That's literally, just don't overthink it. You got two of the best players in all of baseball. It doesn't really matter too much what you surround them with. Again, you'll see as the playoffs are going on, obviously the supporting cast is helping. But when you got those two players, it's hard to predict a team not doing well. When you look at the Baltimore Orioles, I think they could have won this division. This is one a lot of other, obviously, people had them winning the division is because of what they did in 2023, which is definitely fair. Over 100 wins in 2023. But going into the season, when you're looking at the Baltimore Orioles, you knew they weren't going to have Felix Bautista. That was one big thing. And then you had some other pitching injuries that you didn't necessarily account for. And you also had the Corbin Burns trade, which really skyrocketed the Baltimore Orioles win total, in my opinion, as well. But 90.5, like on the surface, I think even now talking about it, obviously, when in hindsight, 91 compared to 90.5, that's a pretty good line. But when you look at the Baltimore Orioles, it's actually, I'm surprised that they got to their 91 wins when they had John Means go down. They had Tyler Wells go down. Kyle Bradish was another one that went down. They had a lot of starting pitchers that did struggle with injuries, and they overcame that fairly effectively. Didn't amount to any playoff success, obviously, so that when you really look at it from the big picture, you can have the best regular season of all time. You get swept with the Toronto Blue Jays line of one run in 2 games. Nobody's going to look back at that season too fondly. But other than that, the Tampa Bay Rays, they're going to be a good team next year. I'm more high on them next year. They're going into the season, Shane McClanahan's injured. Drew Rasmussen's injured going into the season as well. Jeffrey Springs has been on and off injured this season. A lot of pitching injuries there as well. Again, they sold at the deadline. They don't have Paredes or Randy Rosarena anymore, which is very good, obviously. And I'm not even going to bring up the other guy, the guy that's out there breaking laws and is just a terrible stain on society. They don't have that guy at shortstop anymore either, which did impact them on the baseball field, obviously, because he was a good player, but he's a terrible human being. So obviously that outweighs the other. Overall, though, again, it's just really the Blue Jays and Red Sox that surprised me here. In totality for the AL East, the Yankees being good doesn't surprise me. The Baltimore Orioles being in the mix as well. We had going down to the wire. We didn't have the Yankees beating the Orioles in the division by 50 games. I think for me and you, it kind of came down to 2 or 3. Again, a lot of things in the season are hard to predict with these injuries, with these trades, things like that. But overall, for the AL East, the biggest surprises for me is obviously the Toronto Blue Jays and then the Red Sox being a little bit better than they were. I think, obviously, when you go down the stretch and you kind of realize the Boston Red Sox are out of the playoff stretch, the mental goes out of the window. We kind of talked about that on the Monday episode, how important mental is in the game of baseball. So I think in that sense, you kind of lose the ability, like you're not playing for anything anymore, as we saw with the Toronto Blue Jays season.
Yeah, and exactly. And I mean, that's part of it, right? You get out and you know that, you got 20 games left of almost meaningless baseball. And that's tough to play through. That's tough to try to stack wins again when you really know that it's not going to help in the long run. But it's saying that, Carter, I want to go back to the Baltimore Orioles for a second. Just talk about, I think, how their last couple of seasons have been. The biggest problem for the Baltimore Orioles is no playoff experience. A lot of these guys are young, great talents, and they will be very good. It's going to take a little bit for them to gain that playoff experience and to be good in the playoffs. So that'll come down the line for them. They're a very good baseball team, but and they have all the pieces. That's the difference, right? All the pieces are there for the Baltimore Orioles. It's just getting it all together in the playoffs, and that's part of it. And these kids will learn going through the next few years, and I guarantee you that they will make a World Series appearance one way or another in the next couple of years.
it's scary to look at the future when you're looking at the Baltimore Orioles. They already have a complete roster, and they made a ton of trades, and they've sent Connor Norby away, they sent Joey Ortiz away, and it hasn't really hurt them whatsoever. When you can have the ability to trade for a guy like Corbin Burns, they still have the ability to trade for another power bat if they need. Obviously, they're probably going to lose Anthony Santander this offseason. They need pitching. Obviously, with these injuries, you can never have too much pitching. They have the ability to make another blockbuster trade, probably more than one as well. So when you look at the Baltimore Orioles, they're in a very good position, one of the best positions in all of baseball when you look at their starting rotation, when you look at their just honestly roster, and then looking at the prospect pool they still have. Still a very deep prospect pool in Baltimore. And again, comparing it back to the Toronto Blue Jays, you don't necessarily have the greatest team right now on the Toronto Blue Jays organization. You look at that prospect pool, it's not looking too good either. So it's definitely going to be a tough comparison over the next couple of seasons, comparing the Toronto Blue Jays to a juggernaut in the Baltimore Orioles.
Yeah, and I mean, just going back to sort of the AL in totality, is the fact that it wasn't overly a surprise. I think the Blue Jays were going to be that wild card, that's what we expected, but it didn't happen. And there always are those shocking sort of things that happen with certain teams every year. And this year just so happened to be the Toronto Blue Jays. Boston Red Sox, great for Red Sox fans, an interesting season. And Tampa, I mean, sort of pretty much where expected, fourth, fifth in the AL East. I don't know. It was crazy to think that the Blue Jays dropped off so hard and the Red Sox did pretty good. But other than that, I mean, this wasn't a huge shock for the AL East for me.
Yeah, and the other day with the Red Sox, they overperformed a little bit. When you go 81-81, that's not a successful season. And I have the Toronto Blue Jays for sure. At the dead minimum for me, I said they're at least going to be fighting for a playoff spot when it comes down to the end. Maybe they're out of it in the last week. But I thought for sure, I honestly almost had it as a shoe-in. The Toronto Blue Jays are making the playoffs. So that one really came to a surprise to me. Maybe it was a little bit of the Toronto Blue Jays bias. Again, looking back and look at the roster construction. And again, some things that happen, it's tough to expect Bichette to just not play baseball, not be a good hitter at the MLB level. So again, some things that obviously led to the Blue Jays downfall. But overall, them making the playoffs, them being a safe playoff contender, maybe a little bit of my bias was showing in that moment.
Yeah, you needed to see a little bit I don't know. You expected to see some fight from them down the stretch, like you said, and that just wasn't in the cards. Right from the beginning of this season, I think every Blue Jays fan saw what was coming. And that's a problem because you do lose interest in a lot of fans when they know that their baseball team isn't very good almost from, the first month of the season.
Well, we had one of our buddies, 3 weeks into the season, said the Jays are already done. We're like, hey, come on. It's 3 weeks, figure it out. But I guess he saw something, obviously, that we weren't seeing. Maybe it's that outside perspective on the Toronto Blue Jays. Sorry to cut you off there. But yeah, it's crazy that just where we're at right now with what we expected to be. And for me, the floor was the pitching. And when you don't get a good bullpen, I just didn't even have that in the cards. The bullpen being this bad in 2024.
Yeah, man, that is the toughest part, right? Coming off an electric season from the bullpen last season and just a complete fall off of the cliff. It's really not what you want to see. But Carter, in saying that, we got a ton more to get into. We still have the rest of the AL and the rest of the league. So, you know what? We're going to try to spread our time out here a little bit better. So we're not, we could chat this for hours, but we're going to try to keep it pretty short for you guys, pretty condensed, and get you guys all the information. We'll be right back to talk the rest of the AL right after this short break. Today's episode brought to you by Game Time. As I always talk, Game Time is one of my favorite apps to use because I can find the best and cheapest tickets available. They make it so easy. They have their new feature called Game Time Picks. Makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. Gives you the best deal out there. They also have their flash deals, so you can save even more with the exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game. They also have their all-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows you the total upfront with no surprise fees at the checkout. That's one of my biggest complaints with a lot of these sites is I go and I pick my tickets and then I find out that there's an extra $30 charge, $40 charge on top of it, and it makes me not want to buy. They also have their seat views. You get the panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, knowing what your seat looks like, what your view is. It's such a big deal when it comes to buying tickets. They also have the lowest price guaranteed, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the discount. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets and more with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So, Carter, we talked about the AL East, but, it's important that, that we go across the rest of the league and see what is, who was the surprise? Who was the letdown? So let's start with the AL in general, Carter. I know you have a lot to say on sort of where the lines were for betting wise and in comparison to how teams finished. I guess in the AL, which one shocked you?
I'm just going to present all the lines, and then I'll kind of go over which ones I found interesting. So the Minnesota Twins, and I'm presenting this, if I say Minnesota Twins are the first one, that means they had the highest projected win total. I'm going down the list. So Minnesota Twins were projected at 84.5 wins. They got 82. Detroit Tigers were projected at 80.5 wins. They got 86. Pretty big surprise there. Cleveland Guardians, 78.5. They get 92 wins. The Kansas City Royals, 72.5 wins. They get 86. Chicago White Sox, I'd said off camera, you got to predict which one, like what was their projected win total? Just based off, you can use that other information I just presented you. Just guess.
I'm going to say it was probably 70 and a half.
Not even close. It was 60 and a half, but they ended up getting 41. That's a crazy line there. That's obviously the most surprising one. Nobody had that in the cards, I don't think. And you go to the AL West, Astros 92.5. That was their projected. They got 88. Texas Rangers 89.5. They get 78. Seattle Mariners 86.5. They get 85. Los Angeles Angels 71.5. They end up winning 63. And the Oakland Athletics, the 56.5. They end up getting 69. So overall, there's three big ones here for me. It's the Texas Rangers, it's the Kansas City Royals, and the biggest one for me is still the Chicago White Sox. I get that team's bad. They didn't look good on paper, but 41 wins. That's horrendous. I'm just going to leave it at that. There's nothing else to say about it.
No, I mean, I don't know. As any team in the MLB, as a fan base, I just don't know how there aren't riots in the streets. Like, that's how bad that team is. Like, it is frustratingly bad to watch. Like, I don't know if I turned on a White Sox game. Even when they were playing the Blue Jays, I don't know if I was that interested in watching those games. It was just bad. And the White Sox were terrible. And it wasn't fun to watch. It wasn't entertaining. They didn't have a lot of pieces that I was pumped up to tune into. It was just a disaster season. And yeah, I don't know, man. 41 wins is just, it's astronomical, honestly. Like, I cannot believe that that's where a team was at this year.
Yeah, free Luis Robert Jr. Again, people talk about that clip where he's in center field. I don't remember which team they're playing, but it's a fly ball. It's the bottom of the ninth inning, I believe, and he has an opportunity to at least attempt to throw the runner out at home. He just watches, probably throw the ball home. Like, obviously, you should at least attempt to show that you're providing some effort. But I get it. Like, you can't say you don't get it, right? You're Luis Robert Jr. That roster's not very good. Garrett Crochet's another guy on that roster I feel bad for. But again, like, is that one throw? Maybe you win that game. Like, congrats. You get 42 wins. Like, the season just didn't go that well, obviously.
No, exactly. And I mean, I don't know, Carter. I don't want to spend too much time on the White Sox. I mean, again, you could talk about this team for hours just because of how bad they were. One of the surprises for me, Carter, and I think because the line was a little interesting. I mean, it was 10 games off, and that was the Oakland Athletics, who actually I was a little bit even shocked that they got to their 69 win total. Still not a great season, but I think for, where that team was at and some of the pieces that they have, and they had a little bit of excitement, obviously, with the relocation coming. I think it was a fine enough end to their time in Oakland.
Yeah, I'm surprised they got 69 wins. I'll say that. They had it projected at 56.5 for a reason. It was kind of the farewell party for the Oakland Athletics. Mason Miller is a big piece of this. Brent Rooker being ridiculous, a big piece of this. JJ Bleday kind of reviving his career a little bit, having a very good season over there is another reason. Again, like, when you look at that roster, you look at the payroll compared to a lot of other teams, it's tough when you're not paying your guys even a fraction of what some of these other rosters are paying their guys. But as we learned from Toronto Blue Jays, it doesn't really matter about the payroll. To some degree, obviously it does. But at the end of the day, you can have a good team that does not have a very high payroll. But with the Athletics, again, this one didn't surprise me too much. Like, again, the win total is a little bit higher than I expected. But overall, like, I kind of wrote the Athletics off going into the season. But one that surprised me was the Kansas City Royals. When you're 72, like last season, I think they had 72 wins, if I'm correct. They were projected for 72.5. They get 86. They make the playoffs. They win a series. Like, it's a pretty good year for the Kansas City Royals that weren't exactly expected to make the playoffs at all and even be in the running for playoffs for 2024. And teams like this give me a little bit of hope for the Toronto Blue Jays because, again, the Toronto Blue Jays on paper, you could argue, obviously, the Kansas City Royals had a better year. They got some dogs there. Obviously, Cole Reagans, Bobby Witt. You can name a few more, obviously. But it gives me a little bit of faith. The Toronto Blue Jays can have a bad year and then bounce back the following year because they still have some good pieces in their roster. I think that we can't completely write off the Toronto Blue Jays for 2024 or 2025. And there's all other instances of this as well. You got the New York Mets, obviously, as we'll talk about in our third segment. Some teams that don't necessarily have the greatest years and then can bounce back.
Well, Carter, I guess if we're talking surprises, you got to throw in the Detroit Tigers. Like, what an absolute insanity run from them. I was absolutely shocked to see, like, I don't know. Detroit's just one of those teams that when I think of the MLB, I just think of writing them off. I just don't put any faith into them. And what a year from them, making it to the playoffs, giving Cleveland a good run. I mean, it's pretty electric, to be honest with you. Like, Skubal is one of the, like, I don't think I was more excited to watch a game in my entire life than watching Skubal throw out there. It was absolutely unbelievable.
Oh, he's absolutely disgusting. And I almost, like I said, that the Royals surprised me. When you look at rosters, like the Royals, there's some guys on the roster that provide me upside. When you really look at the Tigers, like Riley Green, like that's really the only guy I'm sort of getting excited about when you look at the Detroit Tigers. They do have a pretty good bullpen, which helps. And then just everyone kind of clicking at the same time. You see what happens when you kind of get hot, and they get hot at a good time and they make a little bit of a run. So it's obviously good to see. You look at, if you're looking at on paper, you're looking at like matchups, payroll, things like that. Shouldn't even be close in a lot of these games Detroit Tigers played. But yeah, they make it to the ALDS. So congrats to the Detroit Tigers. Definitely a big one there. And we got to talk about this one, the Texas Rangers. What a fall off. Like there's no bats. Some of their guys just having terrible years. Adolis Garcia. Oh, what happened to this guy?
Yeah. Completely falls off the face of the earth, Carter. I mean, I don't know, man. You know what? I always go back and I look at, we had this conversation. I think it was in one of our buddies' trailers when we were out, and he's a huge Rangers fan. And we had the argument of who's better, Bo Bichette or Corey Seager. Who would you take right now? And who would you take long-term? And Corey Seager had a decent enough year, 278 average, I think, or 275 average. And it was fine. But if you look back over both their careers, who are you taking, Carter? Like, yes, the beginning, last year, this year, it's questionable. It's questionable, but I don't know. It's not that astronomically different. Like, again, we had this conversation. I think we'll talk about this maybe in an upcoming episode or something, just about, what happens if players get in slumps or have a good year, have a bad year, and what, how much, do you take into those? And again, how much do you put in Corey Seager's one fantastic year to say that he's the shortstop of the future? I don't know, man. Like, this sort of proves our point that we were talking about.
Corey, like, I sort of agree with you, but like, I think there's more than just 1 year of Corey Seager. When you look back at it now,
for sure,
you look at the Texas Rangers, Corey Seager is a different breed. Like, I'll just go over like the home run numbers for Corey Seager since 2022. 2022, he had 33. 2023, he had 33. 2024, he had 30. RBIs, 83, 96, 74. Like a little bit of a down year, I guess you could say, for Corey Seager. But I mean, going back to that argument, when we're talking about Bo Bichette and Corey Seager here.
Yeah, it's not a terrible year. And that's what I said. But I don't think that the praise that he had around him after last season justified the talk of Corey Seager is the shortstop of the future. And out of anybody in the league, you're taking Corey Seager. I don't know. And maybe you still are. But to me, I don't look at him on this team as like I don't see this team and think Corey Seager is the best shortstop in MLB right now.
Well, the shortstops in the AL right now are just really good. Like, you got Bobby Witt, obviously. When you look at, you got Lindor on the other side. Gunnar Henderson, for some reason, I almost forgot him. That's the other guy that's just being ridiculous. You got Corey Seager. Like, there are a lot of good shortstops in the major leagues. And Corey Seager is definitely top 10 for me. He could be argued to be top 5. But when we go back to that conversation we had in that trailer, when we're defending Bo Bichette kind of with our lives there, we're looking a little bit dumb right now. But I mean, again, do you expect Bo Bichette to be this bad next season? Absolutely not. Is Corey Seager better at this point? Like, would I rather have Corey Seager or Bo Bichette? I'm willing to be convinced. Right now, I'm almost leaning a little bit towards Corey Seager. Maybe it's just some recency bias here. I think Corey Seager is a better defender as well. Again, it's a debatable question, though, and that's why we were debating it last year. This year, we were in that same debate. I think you got to lean to Corey Seager, obviously, based off recency bias.
Yeah, and I agree. And I get the recency bias stuff. And I'm not really overly saying that it's a drastic, like, you got to pick Bo or whatever. It's more so the fact that Corey Seager over any other shortstop, like, I don't know. I'm probably going Bobby Witt
Oh,
over him,
easily.
and
Yeah.
probably Gunnar. Like, I don't know. Like, there's a lot of different options. And I don't know. I think there was just a lot of praise for Corey Seager for being, yes, he had a great season last year, and hat tips to him. But at the end of the day, again, like we say, one season doesn't prove, one bad season doesn't prove. So, I mean, at the end of the day, Carter, that's just where we're at with him. I just had to throw that in there because I thought it was a hilarious story of us having those arguments till 4 a.m. and in the back of somebody's camper trailer.
Well, for me, it's like non-negotiable. The top 3 shortstop in the AL. Number 3 is Gunnar Henderson. Number 2 is Bobby Witt. Number 1 is Ernie Clement when he plays shortstop. So that's end of the debate.
Yeah, there you go. Who would you rather have, Corey Seager or Ernie Clement? Yeah.
Give me
anyway.
Ernie Clement. Give me Iguodala.
Give me Iguodala. Yeah, that's great. Anyway, guys, we got still a ton to get into with the whole MLB. This might be a little bit of a longer episode, and we'll sort of keep going with this. We just got to take a quick break, and we'll be right back, talk about the rest of the MLB. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. I always talk about FanDuel, one of my favorite apps on my phone, because it probably helps that I'm winning money on it, honestly. And it's a big component to it. I love the live game betting. I know I talk about this all the time, but like being watching a game and being able to throw a bet right on the game that maybe I can parlay into something is so much fun for me. So when you have the hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. I always talk about this. The bonus bets, if you can get them, are so massive. It's like playing with house money. It is unbelievable. I've been trying to get my friends to sign up. I would get people to sign up for me at this point to earn those bonus bets, but I let them have their fun as well. So make sure you guys visit FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. So, Carter, we looked at the AL. Now it's time to take a peek over at the NL. What team surprised you? Who didn't? What were some of the lines going into the year, Carter?
I think for this one, since I have to go over 15 teams, maybe we'll take it by division for this one, because there's going to be a lot of numbers that people are going to have to try to remember. So we'll start with the Braves division, the Phillies, I guess you could say division since they won the division. The Braves were at 101.5. Their actual was 89. Again, injuries play into that. The Philadelphia Phillies, 89.5. Their actual was 95, so they go over. The New York Mets, 82.5, coming off of a very rough season. They get 89. The Miami Marlins, 78.5. Their actual was 62, just a complete fall off there. And then Washington Nationals, not really much here for me to say. 66.5 was their projected. They get 71. So congrats to the Washington Nationals for proceeding and I guess exceeding expectations with their win total. Overall for this, it's really just the Marlins for me. Like, I guess the Braves, I get it. Like, you have Ron Acuna, you take away the injury. Spencer Strider, you still have at that point. 101 wins, maybe a little bit still high. I'm more comfortable with 97. I probably would have hit under there. But again, injuries, tough to account for. It's still fair to have the Braves up there. Miami Marlins, this is the one I want to focus on. They make the playoffs in 2023. I'm not expecting them to do it again necessarily. But they start out 0-9, and they start the season over 34 games, 9-25, and it leads them to trade Luis Arias, their best player by a fairly long shot, to the San Diego Padres. Just the fall off, just how quickly that team spiraled is absolutely insane to me.
Yeah, man, but that's what happens, right? You start losing games and you find the panic button too early. And maybe it was too early, maybe it's not. But if you have a guy like that,
I think you panic on that team.
But I wouldn't go out of my way to trade one of our best pieces and then to go on and only win 62 games. Like, I don't know, maybe you keep that guy around, try to figure something out. But instead, you trade him away and you have absolutely nothing. That team has nothing. Nothing. It is sad to watch.
Oh, yeah, I get rid of Tanner Scott, I believe, as well. So just I don't know what's there, really. Otto Lopez is there. Congratulations, ex-Blue Jay. But overall, that roster, they went full rebuild mode, which is definitely fair for the Miami Marlins. Yeah, like the Mets, that's another one. I said that the Royals give me some faith for the Toronto Blue Jays. New York Mets, again, you look at payrolls. They had one of the highest payrolls, top 3 payroll last season. They didn't make the playoffs. Mets fans, debatably, were in a worse spot than we were. So, again, the New York Mets, they make the playoffs. They have a Francisco Lindor insanity run. We have a guy on the Toronto Blue Jays who's probably go on that type of run as well. We just got to get him to the dance. That is the only problem. But overall, that's again, the Miami Marlins and the Mets, I didn't see the Mets being like crazy, like a really good, like the wild card's kind of where I had them. I'm not sure what you had, but overall, like anything else surprise you about this division?
Yeah, I mean, the Mets is a great story, but it doesn't like push the needle because I didn't have them being terrible and I didn't have them being great. So, I mean, we'll see what they can do in the playoffs. Again, you get to the dance, you never know what's going to happen. So good on them.
Okay, well, diving into the NL Central, this is a division that just was not that good, obviously, the year before. And going into it, the projections kind of showed that they didn't think that this division would be that good again. So they had the St. Louis Cardinals at 85.5. Their actual was 83. The Chicago Cubs was 83.5, and they got actual was 83, so that's a pretty good line there. Cincinnati Reds, 82.5. Their actual was 77. This one I told you off camera was going to make you guess. I realized that we're kind of getting closer to our times here. This, I can't wrap my head around it. The Brewers were projected to get 76.5 wins last season. They got 93, which makes a lot of like, I don't know. We'll talk about that after. And then the Pittsburgh Pirates, 74.5, their actual 76. Braden, I'm going to throw it over to you.
Yeah, man. You know what? I've always liked the Brewers. Like if I have an NL team, it's probably weirdly enough the Brewers. So I never have really written them off. I don't think they have a terrible team. You got Willy Adames, you got Wilson Contreras, you got Rhys Hoskins. I mean, just to name a few, you got Jackson Churio. You got yeah, and like I don't know, man. I don't really understand.
There too. He's good.
I mean, you could name a bunch of. I don't think this is a bad team. I don't understand the line.
Shouldn't even name yet. Yeah. That's like, where I'm at. I don't understand it whatsoever. Like you again. Maybe the spin zone that people are saying on the streets is that Josh Donaldson left the team. So that's why they were projected to just go absolutely in the dumps because you lose a guy like Josh Donaldson, especially if you're talking to you, might have a little bit of a different opinion. But if they were to ask you, they'd be like, yeah, Josh Donaldson's off your team. You're not going to be good.
Yeah. I mean, look what happened to the Blue Jays for a while. Josh Donaldson left and it was down the tube for a while.
Yeah, so. The exact correlation. Josh Donaldson leaves and everything just shipwreck. That's where
falls apart. Yeah.
But other than Josh Donaldson, Luke Voigt was one where the COVID year, I think he led the league in home runs. That's kind of the last time Luke Voigt for me was relevant. The trade of Corbin Burns, obviously, is a big deal. The Carlos Santana, they lost him. They got him at the 2023 trade deadline. But yeah, Jackson Churio, Joey Ortiz, you get in that trade again. Like he's not proven, so it's a little bit harder to do that one. Bryce Terang's really good as well. Like, I just don't like. Maybe you have him at 84 or something like that, but 76.5 is just insanely low to me, especially when you have their division. Like, we'll go over it. The Cardinals weren't that good. The Chicago Cubs weren't that good. The Reds, like a little bit of a surprise to me. I thought they were going to be a little bit better, and the Pirates were the Pirates. Like, I just don't understand why you would have the Brewers as your fourth best win total in that division.
I always think of the NL Central as sort of just meh, like just okay.
It's like, just the Centrals. It's AL and maybe NL. Maybe it's just part of that because the AL Central, like going into this year, like I think the Twins won the division last year with 86 wins. I think it was something like that.
Something like that. Yeah. So I mean, that's definitely part of it. Maybe it's just the Central thing. I don't know. Carter, I guess moving to the West. I mean, I don't even want to talk about the West, but I guess we will. The Dodgers are just nasty, man.
Well, and that's the team that I do want to talk about because their win projection was at 103.5. I don't care how good your baseball team is. That is ridiculous. Like I get you get Shohei Ohtani, you get the best player in the world, but 103 wins, you need 104 wins for this line. I never had that in the cards. They got 98. I guess it was closer than I'm making it out to be. Then they had the Diamondbacks at 84.5. They achieved that at 89. San Diego Padres, 81.5. They got 93. Giants were also at 81.5. They had 80, so a pretty good line there. And then the Colorado Rockies, a really good line, actually, 60.5. They got 61. Yeah, for me, it's just the Dodgers. The Padres are slightly low. I had them bouncing back, but I'm just higher on the Padres. I don't think this line is crazy bad. Again, you don't have Luis Urias at this point, so you can't factor that into conversations. The Rockies were just going to be bad. They're in rebuild mode. Not too much there. The Diamondbacks, again, pretty good team. A fortunate way they missed the playoffs. That definitely sucked the way it kind of worked out in that doubleheader series. And then the Giants got Matt Chapman. So, I mean, I thought they were going to win 120 games, but it didn't happen.
Yeah, or at least be 500, you would have thought, right? That shocks me. But no, the Padres for me out of this division, I mean, I think I was never low on the Padres. The Padres have pieces. They have pieces to be successful. So I wasn't really shocked by that. I found it interesting that were they the third lowest or third highest in that division for
the Padres? Yeah, they were tied for third with the Giants.
Yeah, that's shocking to me, honestly. I think they were a little bit slept on after last year, but
yeah, well,
yeah, obviously they showed up this year.
Yeah, very down year, obviously. And then, like with the Giants, it's kind of like expected. They didn't do a whole lot. They got Matt Chapman, which obviously was pretty good for them. But like you look at that roster, they had Jorge Soler, who they just traded. There's not really like the lineup anyway, isn't really speaking out to me. But Blake Snell, again, they got him, did not have a good start of the season. So it's a lot of things with this. It's like, it's just unexpected things happen. It's really with the injuries. And then, I mean, sometimes you have a Miami Marlins start, you decide that you got to blow it up. But overall, the NL, it's been a lot more fun with the NL, obviously, since they switched the division games. Now we're not playing the Yankees a million times. We're still playing them quite a bit, but now we actually get to see some of these NL teams come more often. So it's nice that they've kind of opened up the league and they've opened our eyes a little bit more, obviously, to the NL. It's still pretty AL biased for us, obviously, with this Blue Jays podcast. But it's nice to, take ourselves out of the AL side and go to the NL once in a while.
Yeah, it is. Like I said this before, I don't really watch a ton of NL because there's a Jays game on every single day. So why would I watch a ton of the NL games? But you know what? It is nice. It's nice to just take a breath and watch a different team. It sort of takes you out of baseball and lets you enjoy baseball again, which after this season I could really use. Carter, and saying that, my guy, I mean, we've been cooking on this pod. A lot of information here for you guys. I know there are a lot of numbers, a lot of stats thrown at you. But we hope you guys enjoyed this little MLB sort of recap just on how the season went, what teams were surprising, what teams weren't. As always, we appreciate you guys for being our first listen, or making us your first listen. There you go. And if you want to find a second listen, go check out Locked on MLB with host Paul Sullivan. Sully puts on a great show. He goes over all this MLB stuff all the time, so go check him out. In saying that, Carter, anything sort of else?
No, last thing is, if you guys had anyone that overachieved your expectations or underachieved, leave it in the comments. We, again, you have 30 teams to cover in about 35 to 40 minutes. It's tough to go in a deep dive about every single team. So let us know if you there's any ones that stood out that we didn't necessarily have time to cover. But just for the rest, it's just kind of the same thing as always. Just we're in a little bit of a dead spot for new information coming out for this offseason. So we're really just, unfortunately, still in 2024 doing some reviews, things like that. That will be the main cause of our content for the next couple of weeks. And obviously question of the day as well. So same thing, whether it's Discord, Twitter, YouTube, anywhere you can reach us, anywhere we do have an account will be a very good spot to do it. Leave a comment, leave a question for us that we will answer on this podcast. Again, with the off season, it's pretty long. It's not the shortest off season of all time. So we're going to have a lot to talk about, obviously coming at you guys 5 times a week. Yeah, just excited to continue on to the week and get closer and closer to Blue Jays baseball.